The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
There's absolutely no question that this shooter intended to terrorize those children, those parishioners, the members of the school staff that were in that building, as well as their parents and the larger community here.
The latest from Minneapolis with an update on the injured, as well as what more we know about the shooter after yesterday's horrific attack at a Catholic church.
You had these mortgage receipts.
Needs to happen for better results on the ground after the inevitable occurrence of natural disasters as they attended morning mass. First, here's where things stand with the victims. 12 patients are still receiving treatment across 2 hospitals. 1 child remains in critical condition. Another child and an adult are in serious condition. And the injuries these victims suffer range from moderate to severe, with some gunshot wounds in the body, others towards the neck and the head. 1 child even taking a shotgun blast to the back while covering another during the shooting. Health officials described how close this was to a much larger tragedy.
You know, there were a lot of gunshot wounds in places that were meant to kill people. And, you know, if there is such a thing as a silver lining to this, there was less casualties than what possibly could have been. And it doesn't take away from the pain that those that did not survive are going through. But this was meant to kill people.
This afternoon, we are getting more insight from the FBI into their investigation of the shooter and a highly disturbing manifesto filled with hundreds of pages of writings. In a post on X, FBI Director Kash Patel says evidence so far demonstrates this was, quote, an act of domestic terrorism motivated by a hate-filled ideology. In the same post, he goes on to identify the shooter as a male, Robert Westman, who we now know legally changed that name to Robin Westman. And look at this. Patel writes the shooter, quote, left multiple anti-Catholic, anti-religious references, both in his manifesto and written on his firearms. He goes on to say the suspect expressed, quote, hatred and violence towards Jewish people, writing, quote, Israel must fall and, quote, free Palestine. Acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota had more to say on some of the writings of the shooter.
The shooter expressed hate towards almost every group imaginable. The shooter expressed hate towards black people. The shooter expressed hate towards Mexican people. The shooter expressed hate towards Christian people. The shooter expressed hate towards Jewish people. In short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us.
Stay with us as we continue to track the latest developments to this story throughout the night. We'll have coverage for you both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Now to another top story. President Trump is pushing crime to the top of the national agenda, working with Republican leaders on a new comprehensive crime bill. It comes as the president continues his federal crackdown on America's biggest cities. Our national correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports from Washington.
Fighting crime, now top of the president's mind.
The President Trump approach of upholding law and order to aggressively fight crime works.
The president announcing Wednesday he's working with Republicans in Congress on a comprehensive crime bill. He says House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune are already on board. Posting on Truth Social, it's what our country needs and now. The White House has been thin on details, but it will likely target cashless bail, something Trump has repeatedly blamed for crime. Just this week, he signed an executive order ending the practice in Washington, D.C.
I mean, they kill people and they get out.
Crime has been a central theme since Trump's 2024 campaign. In June, he sent National Guard troops to Los Angeles during the ICE riots. Earlier this month, he ordered troops into Washington, D.C., sparking criticism from Democrats. But this week, even the city's Democratic mayor acknowledged the surge is having an effect.
Neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason.
Mayor Bowser pointing out carjackings are down 87% and overall crime is down 15% compared with the same 20-day period last year. President Trump now suggesting sending federal troops to other cities like New York and Chicago. Illinois' Democratic Governor J.D. Pritzker alarmed at that idea.
What President Trump is doing is unprecedented and unwarranted. It is illegal.
Maybe Governor Pritzker should spend less time demonizing the police and more time trying to call the President of the United States to get crime in his city under control.
A new AP NORC poll out of the University of Chicago found most Americans say crime is a major problem in big cities, and 55% say it's acceptable to have the National Guard and military assist local police. This crime initiative will be top of the agenda when lawmakers return from recess. There's already a committee hearing set for September 18th with D.C.'s mayor and other top district city officials. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook is suing President Trump to block his attempt to fire her. Trump cited allegations of mortgage fraud. He spent months railing against the Fed and Chairman Powell, of course, mainly over their unwillingness to reduce interest rates. Fed officials are taking it slowly due to inflation concerns, and the White House is ratcheting up the pressure.
I think that, if it were me and I had made the mistakes on the mortgage forms that are accused, and I would either deny it because it was not true, or I would go on leave until people resolve the matter. And the fact that she's not doing that now suggests that she's being partisan.
The federal judge in Cook's case has set another hearing for tomorrow. Meanwhile, chaos at the CDC as the new director is refusing to leave her position after being fired. Health and Human Services fired Susan Menares yesterday, but her lawyers said she's not going anywhere until President Trump himself fires her. Well, today at the White House, the press secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president did fire Menares.
What I will say about this individual is that her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't. So the president fired her, which he has every right to do.
The Washington Post reports Menares disagreed with HHS leadership over new health policies. According to an administration official, Jim O'Neill will serve as acting director for now. He's a top advisor to the health secretary, RFK Jr. Tonight, the White House is celebrating what it calls the most secure border in our nation's history. While President Trump's methods have been called into question, his top officials insist they plan to push ahead with billions of dollars set aside to help them do so. Here's National News Desk Christine Frizzell with the latest.
On the immigration crackdown in America, the Trump administration touting the policies at the border itself, with few people allowed to remain in the country, as well as tactics to arrest those already here. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement reporting 200,000 people have been deported since President Trump returned to the White House.
A part of the success of the most secure border in this nation's history, because we're showing the world there's consequences.
ICE also unveiling this, quote, worst of the worst website, posting photos and crimes of those it's arrested. Many previously convicted of sexually abusing children, as the White House expands its efforts to find places to detain them.
This is what a patriot looks like.
The controversial detention facility known as Alligator Alcatraz in Florida's Everglades set to close in a matter of days after a judge ordered operations to wind down following a series of legal and sanitation problems.
We think it's despicable that an activist judge has inserted themselves in this migrant detention facility to the point where DHS is now having to relocate these illegal immigrants to other detention facilities around the country.
Since the deployment of the National Guard to Washington, D.C., there have been more than 300 immigration-related arrests. That number now up to 5,000 in Los Angeles.
All these sanctuary cities that refuse to work with ICE, where we know public safety threats are being released every day into this country, especially those cities, we're going to address that.
Critics warning the National Guard troops are just the beginning, with millions of dollars now approved to hire 8,500 CBP employees and 10,000 new ICE agents. Some say they're on the streets now and will be sent to voting booths next.
All that funding and that big, beautiful portrayal allows more resources for this private police force that increasingly is showing a tendency not to swear an oath to the Constitution, but to the President of the United States.
And the White House reiterated today that any cities that want the National Guard's help just need to ask for it. But for even those who don't, Chicago, Baltimore, and New York, for example, troops may be arriving anyway. Taylor?
And Christine, yeah, there's been some questions into what extent the president can actually do this. So as far as sending troops into cities and states that don't want them, is there any concrete decisions on this yet?
Yeah, this is one of those things where two things can be true at the same time. First, there is the Posse Comitatus law from 1878, which blocks the U.S. military from carrying out civilian law enforcement. But the president is allowed to send in troops to protect federal property and personnel. The big legal decision a lot of us are watching to see is what happens in California. A judge is still deciding if the White House sending those troops to Los Angeles was unlawful.
Live from Washington, D.C., Christine Frizzell, thank you. Nevada officials say hackers got into government networks and personal information may be compromised. Officials say that outage started Sunday morning. The hackers also disrupted essential services like Department of Motor Vehicle Operations. DMV offices statewide are still closed today. And as of yesterday, the governor's office says investigators have not identified the specific nature of this data. An Alabama murder convict, Christopher Barber, will be granted a new trial. Barber's been on death row for 31 years for the killing of Thelma Bishop Roberts back in 1992. Barber confessed to the killing at the time, but later recanted, saying his confession was coerced by law enforcement. In 2021, DNA testing linked Roberts' neighbor to the crime. The state says testing doesn't exonerate Barber, however, and Alabama's attorney general says he plans to appeal. Well, an Idaho judge is considering arguments over whether or not to release crime scene photos of the quadruple murder of 4 Idaho University students. Brian Koberger pleaded guilty to the murders last month and is serving 4 life sentences. Now, family members of 2 victims are suing to keep the evidence sealed. No decision has been made yet. Still a big show ahead. How fast America's economy has been growing lately and why economists are surprised at the newest numbers. Then the actions Russia's military is taking near U.S. borders that's escalating tensions as President Trump pushes for peace in Ukraine. Plus, in the aftermath of yesterday's school shooting in Minnesota, what parents can do to help your children feel safe again. We're back in 90 seconds. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is hitting back after a group of FEMA employees sent a letter critiquing how the Trump administration is running the agency. Today, Noem said she wants to eliminate FEMA as it is right now.
FEMA needs to be more responsive, that this agency as it exists today needs to be eliminated and reformed into an agency that is supporting our local and state officials that are there on the ground and responsive to the individuals that are necessary to help people be healed and whole through these situations.
Noem went on to say that states should lead the disaster response with the federal government there to provide support. The U.S. economy grew at a faster pace than economists expected last quarter. Government data shows the gross domestic product rose at a 3.3% pace. That's better than the 3% estimate. Americans were spending more, helping to fuel GDP. But unemployment claims are down as of last week. The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits dropped to 229,000. It reflects how many people were laid off. There's also been a drop in hiring since spring. Now, many economists are describing the current landscape as a no hire, no fire economy. The Fed and Wall Street are closely watching the job market. Japan's trade negotiator made a last-minute trip cancellation to the U.S. Thursday. This is expected to further delay talks to finalize a $550 billion investment package offered by Tokyo in exchange for relief on punishing tariffs. A Japanese spokesperson says further talks on certain points are needed, and Japan is arguing the Trump administration to issue an executive order to cut auto tariffs to 15%, which the two agreed to in July. An executive order is in place for that baseline rate, but not for automobiles. At least 21 people are dead, 48 others injured after Russia launched a major aerial attack in Kyiv. Rescue crews were on site today. Now, according to Ukraine's Air Force, Russia deployed hundreds of drones and missiles across the country overnight. Russia's defense ministry says the strike was within Ukraine's military-industrial complex. Ukrainian President Zelensky says Russia chose the attack over negotiation. Relations between the U.S. and Russia remain tense as the war in Ukraine continues. As the national news desk, Matt Galka explains, Russian military action continues to go on near U.S. borders while the president is pushing for a peace deal.
In the 2 weeks since President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Alaska, there have been more encounters between the U.S. and Russia, but they haven't involved officials talking peace. The U.S. has tracked at least 4 Russian spy planes within the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone, a stretch of international airspace outside of the U.S. and Canada. An incident on Tuesday involving a Russian spy plane sent U.S. fighter jets scrambling. Foundation for Defense of Democracy's fellow Ivana Stradner says the encounters are typical Putin-type games.
We cannot perceive this as one isolated event. This is in a context writ large, which tells you truly all you need to know, that Russia is not serious about ending this war.
The interactions, while harmless so far, come during a still delicate time in U.S. and Russia relations. Trump suggested earlier this week that potentially devastating economic sanctions for Russia are still on the table if the country doesn't move towards peace in its war with Ukraine.
It will not be a world war, but it will be an economic war. And an economic war is going to be bad. And it's going to be bad for Russia, and I don't want that.
The New York Times reports Russia or its proxies are also surveilling the U.S. and European ally weapons routes through Germany. Russia is reportedly using drones to watch how the U.S. and Europe are moving military supplies meant to aid Ukraine.
It's very uncomfortable for many people in the West to acknowledge that we are already at hybrid war against Russia. And the sooner we understand how Russian military doctrine operates, the better for us, because we still have cards to play.
The spying could help Russia or its allies with intelligence in the war, along with aiding potential sabotage attempts. Attacks that rose steadily between 2022 and 2024, but have decreased in 2025. That, according to a report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Well, listen up if you drive a sports car, because top-selling sports cars are being recalled due to a fuel leak risk. General Motors is recalling over 20,000 Chevrolet Corvettes, from model years 2023 to 2026. And the recall affects cars equipped with a left-side radiator and fan combination. Excess fuel could actually spill into the fuel filler pocket during refueling. and leak onto an ignition source. Not good. Dealers will fix the issue for free. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Ohio, where police are getting more support to fight violent crime.
The man who represents the hundreds of sworn officers in the Cincinnati Police Department outlined for us how his understanding of the state's help will be implemented.
So if we have people that are fleeing from the police that we know are armed with guns, and because of our policy we can't chase them, to have an airplane or a helicopter follow them in the sky until they eventually pull over or bail from the vehicle, whatever else, to be able to get descriptions of those people and to be able to know where that vehicle is going to be very helpful.
The governor spoke about the arrangement last week, saying he received a letter from the city accepting the state's offer. The letter outlined the help.
We come in with the highway patrol. We come in with other assets that we have for our parole officers, for example, our liquor control agents. But the understanding always is they work directly with the police department. No one is ever going to take control away from Cincinnati Police Department.
People who are applying for the money are getting this money that should not have gotten the money. We have people from out of state applying for this money, and we are seeing the mistakes that are happening right here in front of our eyes. Taxpayers have to foot the bill, like always.
Richland County Democrat Jermaine Johnson calling out the State Department of Education for giving taxpayer-funded school vouchers to ineligible students. The $3.1 million Education Scholarship Fund was awarded to 3,000 South Carolina students to attend private schools for the 2024 to 2025 school year. 1,005 accounts were suspended or students withdrew for enrollment eligibility issues after they already received a $1,500 payment. State education officials say they first found the problem after their first student count on the 45th day of school. They realized hundreds of students were still enrolled in public schools.
And that's the problem that I continue to see, is the kids who truly do need the resources are not the ones who are receiving it. We have individuals who are gaming the system who are receiving these dollars that should not have gotten access to these funds.
Coming up, a family counselor shares how parents can help their children manage anxiety in the wake of the recent mass shootings. We'll be right back.
I think there's a lot of maybe unrecognized heroes in this event, along with the children that were protecting other children, which is really amazing to hear about. I might be saying too much, but we had one kid that covered up another kid and took a shotgun blast to his back and things like that.
It's an unfortunate reality of life that school shootings seem like they are becoming more and more frequent occurrences, even for families who are not directly touched by these tragedies. The topic itself can be traumatic to discuss for parents and children alike. Medical reporter Liz Bonis has more from a family counselor on how to talk to your kids about violence and anxiety.
Hey there, everybody. It may be tough for the next few days for kids to concentrate in the classroom. Counselors tell us it's hard to focus on academics when you're afraid for your own safety. And since much of that feeling may come from what kids see on TV or on social media right now about the school shooting, Vanessa Brown, the program director of the Family Healing Center at Ohio's Central Clinic Behavioral Health, told me, start by asking kids what they have seen and what it made them feel inside.
There's coping skills in that too, because you can help them to take social media breaks, right? They can write in their journal, help them to journal some things down. And like I said, just take mini breaks.
Vanessa says if they're worried about their own safety at school,
let them know that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have those worries, but then reassure them that your school has safety protocols in place, and remind them of those trainings and the drills that they've experienced while they're at school. And that's going to be the best way to deal with that.
She says keeping kids consistent in activities, going to practice or playing in their usual sports, gives a sense of normalcy in a time where what they're seeing or thinking about is anything but normal. She says be a sense of comfort and know that the communication needs to be continuous with an event like this.
But I would keep the door open for a regular conversation, because kids take a long time to process what they're feeling and understand what they're feeling. And so keep the door open. It's not a one and done conversation. It really is something that you can kind of just talk about even every day. If you bring it up with them and just check in with them. How are you feeling about what we talked about yesterday?
Now, we do remind you, if you or a child do need help and you don't know where to go or who to reach out to, the 988 number can refer you to a counselor in your area. That number is available to you and to others 24/7. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Coming up, we head back to Minneapolis with more on what the community is doing tonight. We will be back in 90 seconds. Here is a live look over Minneapolis. We're at the Basilica of St. Mary in just a few minutes. Members of multiple faiths will be coming together for an interfaith service to mourn and reflect and uplift one another during this time of tragedy. We invite you to join us again this evening as we continue to follow the latest out of Minneapolis following the deadly Catholic church school shooting. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.